Hello, everyone. It's Shane Conto, your Wasteland review, and welcome to Wasteland Talks, my weekly talk show where I talk about whatever the hell I want. And I have a very special guest, my brother Ethan, and we're going to be doing a special series and debuting a new segment on the show called the Wasteland Spotlight. And we're going to be spotlighting the genre of film noir and doing a series of videos highlighting some of the classic films and modern classics of the genre. Ethan had reached out to me for some recommendations, and I gave him a whole damn list of them because it's me. And then Ethan brought up the idea of potentially doing this, and I thought it was a great idea. And now we're doing it. So, Ethan, thank you for starting this up, having this idea, and for coming on to talk about some film noir.
No problem. It's going to be a fun ride.
Absolutely, and we have some big biggins for this particular episode. We're going to be talking about the Billy Wilder classic Double Indemnity. So for those who are actually paying attention to the video, showing off my movie collection, we have Roman Polanski's Chinatown, even though we don't talk about Roman Polanski, the single film that actor Charles Lawton directed, The Night of the Hunter, and probably the prototypical film noir sham shade, and it's The Maltese Falcon, starring Humphrey Bogart. And I had just bought this beautiful, sexy 100-year anniversary of Warner Brothers 4K of Maltese Falcon. Boy, did it look crisp watching this. I have two of these on Criterion, and I think Chinatown's on Criterion. Um, if it isn't, then they're messing that one up. But now we're going to take each of these films, give them a nice little dive, and each of these parts of this particular series, we're going to do four films. So let's get things started with Double Indemnity. This is a film from 1944 from writer director Billy Wilder. Many people probably know Billy Wilder for such classic comedies like Some Like It Hot and The Apartment, but here going full blown noir as we have actor Fred McMurray, Barbara Stanwyck, and E.G. Robinson, who's one of those like classic gangster movie actors, and by this time was playing supporting roles. And we have a Los Angeles insurance representative lets an alluring housewife seduce him into a scheme of insurance fraud and murder that arouses the suspicion of his colleague, an insurance investigator. So we have our insurance representative played by McMurray. We have Stanwyck playing our alluring housewife and Robinson playing this investigator. But Ethan, what are your general thoughts on Double Indemnity?
Um, the whole, I know that's part of the noir genre, but I really enjoyed the whole narration
Mm-hmm.
of the movie. Um, it really added that like extra bit to it, especially if you might have missed some stuff. It's all being talked about throughout the movie by the person that went through it.
Mm-hmm. And done some
Um,
bad stuff.
oh yeah. Um, I felt like the acting was really good for that time. Um, I had one gripe about it, but it's just I guess it was just the time, but just the overuse of baby, the word it
Baby,
just
baby, baby, baby.
I don't know. It's a little cringy. I think that's really the only gripe I had about it. But I think the scene that's stuck out the most in this film was when Walter Neff went to the house for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
and Mrs. Dietrichson comes out, and you can tell just by um, the look in his eyes and the look in her eyes that he was in trouble.
And that
Um,
was the moment he knew he'd done effed up.
yeah, even if there wasn't any, I'd say, narration prior to what was going on, like at the beginning where he has his starting his confession,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. Um, you could tell that he was going back there no matter what, and it was to see her and not have anything else to do with, I guess, really what he went there for.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you could tell um, it was going to be a shit show after that first scene. His life was gonna
You
go down the
know,
drain.
taking one good look at this woman, you know she's up to no good. Barbara Stanwyck plays such a great like noir film femme fatale. It's just like you know she's a bad person, but like her just looking down from that balcony and him looking up at her, and you're just like,
Yeah.
well, the trap has been set and things are going to go, which I forgot to mention my favorite Billy Wilder film, Sunset Boulevard, um, which the narration's such an important part in some of his films, Billy Wilder's films, and this whole entire film's through the framework of our protagonist Walter Neff giving like his confession. And after all the stuff, you see him all beat up and bleeding and everything, just coming back and being like, well, this is the craziness that led me to this point. And that's such a cliche at this point. It's like, how did I get here? But like this is where that really started. And in particular, Sunset Boulevard does a fantastic one of those. It's just like, yeah, that's my body floating in the pool there. How did I get here? It's just like, oh, okay, you're dead. How do we get here? And Fred McMurray, I really only know him from two Billy Wilder films. He's also in The Apartment, but he's a really good actor. He's a big dude. He definitely has like a big presence on screen. Barbara Stanwyck just has this. They use the term alluring in the plot synopsis on IMDb, and they're not wrong. She just has this look to her that's very like sexual and just magnetic, pulling him in. She has that like blonde hair and like that one part with her with the sunglasses and everything. It's very like, yep, she does it. She's up to no good. And there's some interesting pieces at play. Obviously, there's conspiracy to murder here, trying to off her husband, and the uses of like the train and eyewitnesses. And I'm a big fan of E.G. Robinson. He was a very interesting person. He was actually one of the big whistleblowers for the McCarthy blacklistings in Hollywood. He turned on a bunch of his screenwriting and acting friends. Um, but early on, he was in a lot of like gangster flicks, so like he was playing gangsters. But like he went on to be in both the Ten Commandments, uh, and also Soylent Green before he passed away. So like he had like a decades long career of acting from like the 1920s all the way up into the 1970s. And really like him in this role. He definitely is that like suspicious kind of investigator, and he's just like, something's wrong here. And he also has that very like iconic kind of voice, which we'll be talking about a couple other actors who have very iconic voices in some of these movies. But
Hmm.
In general, this is probably my least favorite of the four we're going to be talking about because some of the other ones I'm like I absolutely love and they're some of my favorite movies. But this is still like this is peak film noir, and Billy Wilder was one of the greatest writer directors, especially at that time. He knew how to be like darkly funny and also know how to have like that weight of danger and everything. But what other things stood out to you, Ethan?
I was actually going to say he stole the show. It's they had some good acting in it, but then when he showed up and then throughout the rest of the movie, you're like, damn. Like he just was a presence whenever he was on screen, and it made it really exciting having him be there investigating.
Mhm.
And I mean, not necessarily knowing it was him until you know towards the end, but it was it was exciting seeing him put shit together and
Yeah,
and be like, oh, he's gonna find out that it was somebody that he knows in
yeah.
his own company.
And it's really funny too because he's such a small guy, but like, and Fred McMurray's such a huge guy, but he's always like, he's right there, he's watching. And also, I was looking through IMDb, I found the shot that I was talking about with her and like the sunglasses in that store. It's just like, she's 100% up to no good. But anything else?
Well, speaking of that, um, he was really in trouble when that started happening. Where he was like when he was telling her that, oh, we can't be seen together, we can't be talking to each other, and this and that, and that kind of sealed his fate right there. I think.
You don't get involved with a dangerous woman and then be like, uh, sorry, no more. It's like, how did he think she was going to react? Very poorly. That's exactly how she reacted. And caused a lot of problems for him. And it's that kind of situation. It's just like getting into this like toxic relationship and being like, yeah, I want out now. And it's just like, you'll get out when I tell you you can get out. And it definitely ratcheted up the tension and suspense with the film.
Definitely. But yeah, I think that's all I really have for that. Other than I like the fact that it really started. The film started at the end,
Mhm.
and it worked its way through all the events.
It's definitely a big noir thing, and today it feels super cliched. Also, I know, I know, a couple of really fun times that I've seen in modern movies is definitely Deadpool.
Hmm.
Like, what was it, Deadpool 2, where he blows himself up at the beginning of the movie? It's like, how did I get here? His floating head going through the sky. Just like, yep, this is how we got here. But now you can get Double Indemnity on Criterion Collection. This is actually a really nice Criterion too. I haven't gotten a chance to look at uh some of the special features and stuff like that. They even have a couple radio adaptations on here and a few documentaries, which is pretty interesting. And if you're not ready to go out and buy it, you could also rent it on Prime Video. So it's available there. And double checking to see if it's any on any streaming services. I wouldn't be
I got it
surprised.
on. You can get it for free on Roku.
Oh, very nice. Watch on
I
Roku.
forget what app it had you download, but
This
there's a lot
just
of classic
screamed
movies on it.
I'm on Max to me. I'm a little surprised that it's not on Max. But alas, it is not. Next up, we're going to a bit of a more modern noir. A take from 1974, director Roman Polanski's Chinatown. Forget about it, Jake. It's Chinatown. And this film is indeed starring Jack Nicholson as J.J. Geddes, or Mr. Getz, if you ask, Noah Cross, who purposefully keeps getting a man's name wrong to show power. Um, the very seductive and mysterious Faye Dunaway as Evelyn Mulray. John Huston, who is a very interesting figure because he's one of the most powerful and well-known directors in the history of Hollywood for films like The African Queen, and a lot of other classic films, and some supporting turns from like Perry Lopez, John Hillerman from Magnum PI. I don't know if you picked up on Higgy Baby, being
Yeah,
the
yeah.
in this, and Roman Polanski himself was the one who cuts up Jake's nose. He's that little shit guy with the knife. And then his one of his partners is actually Bruce Glover, dad of Crispin Glover from Back to the Future, who plays Marty's dad. And it's weird because they look almost exactly alike, except Bruce Glover's face is fuller because he's not like a thin man like his son. But this film does take place in 1930s Los Angeles. A private detective hired to expose an adulterer in 1930s Los Angeles finds himself caught up in a web of deceit, corruption, and murder. That is putting it very vaguely. There's a lot of stuff going on here. And also to point out, the movie Rango from Nickelodeon Studios, starring Johnny Depp, is an adaptation of Chinatown. And if you look at it, the turtle who Ned Beatty voices is basically Noah Cross. And the whole entire thing where this is all about water is taken right out of Chinatown. And as we were watching it, my wife Jess pointed out that the movie Monsters Inc. is basically Chinatown too. And I'm like, that is really weird if you think about it and take a step back. And one other fun reference from because somebody at Pixar is very interested in Chinatown, apparently. If you watch the movie Inside Out, there's a point where they're going through like that cloud place, and one of the one of the characters is just like, Forget about it. It's Cloud Town." I'm like, you gotta be kidding me that they made a Chinatown reference in this. So this is a pretty influential film. This did uh it was an Oscar winner for best writing, original screenplay, and uh Jack Nicholson was nominated for best actor, and this was nominated for best picture. But Ethan, what are your general thoughts on Chinatown?
I felt like it was exciting, suspenseful. But on the other hand, I felt it lacked the dark and gritty. I know it's not necessarily like 100%. It's like classic noir, but felt like it would have been cool if they went and made it a black and white film.
That would have been interesting.
You get more of the ambiance of a noir film. Um, the whole sad to see there wasn't really narrating, storytelling in it either. But I feel like a lot of the stuff that was going on in that movie, and more specifically the massive plot twist that you find out later, pretty close to the end of the movie, makes up for all that. I mean, because he's like constantly in like crazy situation throughout the throughout the film. So I mean, it really is exciting. It's suspenseful. Um, but I still wish it was a little more, you know,
Yeah,
noir feel to it.
Roman Polanski definitely went in the direction of like a lot of this film takes place in broad daylight and it's Los
Yeah.
Angeles. So it's like bright, like it's very bright. And it's interesting that they have Jake dressed in like light suits. So like everything is a lot lighter. Even like Noah Cross, his whole outfit is this like lighter suit color and everything. But it is an interesting kind of like taking a more daytime approach to noir. It still has a lot of those elements of like your main character is an investigator. He's going through this mystery, and you have Faye Dunaway, who's like the femme fatale of it all. But she isn't even like a traditional femme fatale, as you find out. There's a lot more to her and her situation than just like, did she kill her husband or not? Um, that scene is messed up when you find out what's really going on here. And Faye Dunaway's amazing and tragic. And also, it's showing one of those moments where, like, most protagonists in these kinds of movies are not great people. And he just starts slapping the shit out of her and just like, dude, like, and then you find out the trauma that she went through. It's just like, and it's just like, I feel dirty watching what he just did to this woman. But it's very interesting too, seeing how did you feel watching Jack Nicholson not being like Jack Nicholson, like crazy over the top Jack
It was
Nicholson?
it was a nice change of pace.
Hmm.
I think he did really well um, embodying that character. Um, I mean, he felt believable.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, it was kind of weird him not being like necessarily like a psychopath, but I mean, you saw a little bit of it,
Yeah, he has his moments where he loses his temper
and
a bit.
I thought it was pretty amusing how much he gets his ass kicked in this
Yeah, like Jake's not exactly like your formidable opponent in a fight or anything like that. Because, like, if you really think about it, Jack Nicholson isn't that big of a guy, and like he has a bit he has a big bark too. Like he shit talks a lot of people that gets in his way, and then they wind up beating the shit out of him. And like half the movie, he has like this giant bandage on his nose because he gets his whole nose cut open. Um, I love that's such a wonderful little detail because like when you see him with his fedora, his sunglasses, and like that nose bandage on, it's such like a very specific look and like iconic character design. Like they have this particular shot of him with like the hat on, the sunglasses, the nose bandage, and everything. What always surprises me about this film every time I watch it is how detailed this movie is. There's like so many details. There's clues in like every single scene in this movie. And if you're not 100% paying attention, you're going to miss some of it. And every time I rewatch it, I pick up on new details that I didn't notice before. And everything comes together. Like, this is a really complicated plot, but somehow, like, every little piece of thread comes together and delivers such an impactful story and mystery around it.
movie. It's definitely a movie you need to pay attention to, like 100% pay attention
Yes.
to.
Or you're like, what happened? Why are they here again? Um, because I feel like not a single scene is wasted. There's always something moving it. And, you know, from the little miscommunication with like the groundskeeper towards the beginning of the film, like you would not think that would come back and be so important, but it was. And like you legitimately are questioning like, did Evelyn really kill her husband through most of it? And then of course you meet Noah Cross and you're just like, I don't trust this man a single bit. And John Huston is so like just to give a little bit of perspective on like how insanely influential John Huston is to like film. So like he was a big actor, he was a big director. He directed The Asphalt Jungle, which is another uh big noirish type film. His daughter is Angelica Houston. So actress Angelica Houston is the daughter of John Huston, and if I'm not mistaken, her son is Jack Huston, who is still acting today. So like they have generations of actors in their families. And what's really, really creepy is the studio wanted Angelica Houston to play Evelyn and then playing his daughter in this movie. And then once you find out what actually happens in this movie, that feels extra disgusting. And I'm glad they did it. Because then there's all kinds of insinuations here. Um, there's such an interesting like mystery of like who's this young woman? And if you haven't watched this movie before, you're just like, there's so many possibilities, and I can guarantee you, you cannot guess like how she actually fits into this movie. Also, one other fun little supporting role, Burt Young from Rocky. Paulie is one
Yeah.
of Jake's clients who he ropes into all these shenanigans. And also, her butler is James Hong, still acting today. Insane. Still in Kung Fu Panda movies and TV shows, and also was in Everything Everywhere All at Once. But just the acting in this is fantastic. Roman Polanski directs the hell out of this. Roman Polanski is such a great director, and then turned out to be a horrific scumbag, and which is why he's not allowed back in this country. So, because if he did, he'd
Just like
be immediately
just like the
arrested.
character.
Yep.
Uh,
But what are some of the other things that stood out to you about the movie?
um, I honestly didn't even really connect that it was supposed to be set in the 30s. Like I know, like after doing, writing the notes and whatnot, like I know what they're wearing and vehicles that they were driving and whatnot, but it was, I don't know, I wasn't 100% convinced that's what the time that it set in.
Because
it
like
just it just didn't feel it.
it could have easily been like the 50s and stuff like that. I think the thing that really connects it to the 1930s is like the politics of it all. And here's the thing, LA County's still having water issues. Like that's still a thing. And the fact that like this whole entire film is like drenched in politics on top of it and
Mhm.
like powerful people screwing over the regular person. It's pretty relevant today. So it's still there.
Yeah, the whole plot, like what was actually going down throughout that whole thing, when you really sit down and think about it, it's really fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have all this water, but you're going to be paying for it because we have more power and we can take it.
Well, and I think that's the
Like,
interesting thing too, because a lot of noirs are about like a murder. Like, this is about a murder, but there's so much more attached to said murder than just like, oh, I want to kill my husband for an insurance policy, like in Double Indemnity. There's a whole entire county-wide conspiracy going on here. And like Jake gets himself into
Yeah,
some big
and
shit
it's
in
not a
this
small
movie.
county either.
No, this is like one of the biggest cities in the world, and Jake's like way over his head. And I feel like it's so interesting, like why this is called Chinatown, and then you get that last line of the movie, and you're just like, damn. And like this is a bleak
Yeah,
ending.
I mean that too. I was like, waiting for that, like, because I mean they weren't in Chinatown a whole lot,
No,
but the most like the pivotal scene of that movie, that's where it was.
yep. And
Yeah, that's where you.
Chinatown's always looming over him because of his past and stuff like that. And just that's one of the best lines in movies. Let it go, Jake. It's Chinatown. And just like that horrible, it just represents that horrible feeling of not being able to do anything about your situation and you just accepting like stuff's bad and it's not going to work out. And people in power that are corrupt are going to get out of this. And like this has the biggest downer ending out of all the movies that we watched, certainly for sure. Because spoiler alert, this is not a happy ending. So if you like happy endings, Chinatown's not your movie.
No, not even close.
No, not even close. Also, trigger warning. There's some really uncomfortable uh, themes and topics that this film tackles in terms of sexual relationships that should not be happening. So, just to warn you, it gets weird. But is there anything else that stood out about Chinatown?
I think that's it.
Well, you can actually check out Chinatown on Paramount Plus or MGM Plus, which why the hell's MGM Plus a separate thing, seeing as it was bought by Amazon? But those are just my thoughts. So you can check out Chinatown. I've had this DVD for a while. Um, and this is one of my favorite movies, so I was excited to talk about this one. Speaking of one of my favorite
I
movies,
forgot how I watched it. I think it was actually on Amazon.
do you have Paramount Plus on Amazon?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know. I forget how I watched it. But that's
I
one of
can
the
double
ones that I
check.
didn't
Maybe
pay
it is
for.
also on Amazon. It is also available on Amazon. So it's on. Oh, so listen to this. It's on Canopy streaming service, Hoopla streaming service, MGM Plus, Paramount Plus, and Prime Video. So there's a lot of places you can watch this. So if you want to check it out, go check it out. Now, this next film is probably the most obscure movie that we are talking about, and potentially the creepiest. And that
Uh-huh.
is The Night of the Hunter, which I have on my lovely. This is like old Criterion DVD. And this film is from director Charles Lawton, who was a very famous actor in like early cinema. And this is literally the only film he ever directed, which if you're going to direct one movie, he delivered a winner. So, and he was in films like Spartacus, Mutiny on the Bounty. So like he was in some pretty big films. He passed away at 63 years old. He was also a very large man. So like but he was born in 1899 and passed away in 1962. But this film most notably is stars Robert Mitchum, who is a very famous film noir actor. Out of the Past is also one of those like top tier classic noir films, and he plays Harry Powell, a fake preacher with love and hate tattooed on his hands. Um, and we have Shelley Winters, who plays the widow Willa Harper. Lillian Gish plays Mrs. Cooper, who comes in to play later in the film. She was actually an extremely famous silent film star. So, like, by the time this movie came out, she had been acting for decades. And also, Ben Harper, the husband, who only shows up in like one or two scenes, is played by Peter Graves, aka the lead from the Mission Impossible show. So there's some, and I don't really think the two child actors really did a whole lot post being child actors, but this film focused on a self-proclaimed preacher marries a gullible widow whose young children are reluctant to tell him where their real daddy hid $10,000 he had stolen in a robbery. So, Ethan, what are your general thoughts on The Night of the Hunter?
I was really impressed with it. It had so many themes in it that I enjoy in a film. Like it was dark, thrilling. It was definitely nerve wracking, and I guess to top that one off, it's at times pretty disturbing.
Yep.
You don't. It's hard to think of a movie that's that old being disturbing, but some of those scenes, um, you really got that feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I could only imagine what people felt watching that movie. What
In
the
1955,
40s?
this movie came out in 1955.
1950.
So like also it's so weird this came out in the 1950s, which was like golden age of America, and then this creeps on into the theater and you show up and for 90 minutes just like cuz this is like a disturbing old school fairy tale kind of film draped in noir and like German expressionism and just this creepy American Gothic kind of feel.
Yeah, there was two specific scenes in this that really stood out to me. It's when the gullible widow met her fate, and she's just floating in the river, lake, whatever it is,
That is such a
tied
creepy
up to the
shot.
car. Yeah, it was like I was surprised. And then you got him like out a ways on the hill singing a song, and they're like, does he ever sleep? And like it was just like really eerie because he's so close and not knowing that they're actually there, but he's like
Mhm.
on their heels like this
Yep.
whole time. And like I don't know how far they got, but it felt like how the hell is this dude finding him? I guess he literally just followed the river until he
Mhm.
found them, and that's really what happened. And there was just a bunch of scenes that was like little things that the kids were doing that he was going to like straight up like fucking kill them, and you're like, geez, dude.
This film has so much to say about so many things. There's an uncomfortable thread about sexuality throughout this film and sex. Like, and to be clear, he's not an actual preacher. He is a con man, but he has this disturbing connection that he feels like he has to God. And I think you can make the debate like, is he mentally unstable? or like does he like legitimately think he's talking to God? But like even from that one scene early with him watching that woman do her dance and like him being so angry about a woman being sexual, he's like clenching his hate hand and he sticks it in his pocket and then shoots his knife out, which apparently in the original script he was supposed to stick in his pant pocket and shoot the knife out through his pants, which apparently that was a little too heavy-handed. So they're like, we're gonna put his jacket pocket. Because like he has like that whole entire scene where he runs down Shelley Winter's character for wanting to have sex with him on their wedding night. It's just like he is the most disturbing and messed up religious zealot you're gonna find in a movie. Like he takes
Mhm.
everything about Christianity and just warps it to like his most like despicable and hateful approach to the world. And Harry Powell's legitimately one of my favorite movie antagonists because one, Robert Mitchum's amazing. Like he is uncomfortable. He is ridiculously charismatic. He's wrapping these townsfolk around his finger, and
Mhm.
like the kids know what's up, or at least the main boy, John knows what's up. He knows he's not a good man. And like Powell is such a creepy and unnerving presence. The whole like the wrestling match between love and hate and like that
Mhm.
whole entire thing and his creepy singing. Like Robert Mitchum actually has a decent voice and like will just be like that one scene when he's on the horse off in the distance is just his silhouette riding across that hill, him singing along, or especially at the end where Mrs. Cooper's sitting with her rifle, like rocking back and forth in the dark, and he's just sitting out there and they're singing back and forth, and the girl comes in with the lantern. She blows out and he's gone. Like, there's some legitimately great horror movie moments in this. Like, this movie's scarier than some horror movies.
Mhm.
Um, and more horror movies released today. So like there's some really creepy things. He's so creepy. And I do love Miss Cooper. Miss Cooper doesn't take shit from nobody. Uh
Nope.
and she's also like her perspective on religion is much more like we're here to take care of each other and be good to each other and care about each other. And then like it talks about like our darkest human nature, like the mob that happens at the end of the film that's all destructive. It just there's so many things going on, and this movie's 90 minutes. Like they really make so much happen in this movie. And just from the visuals, like the use of shadows and like the set designs and everything, it's amazing. The scene where uh he puts his knife to Shelley Winter's character, like him standing there and the giant pointed roof, like the ceiling, and just like the shadows and everything, and him flicking on the knife and coming down at her. It's all fantastic. And then like that shot of her in the bottom of that lake, that's haunting.
Mhm.
It's creepy. The movie gives me chills just thinking about it.
I did not know what to even expect, I guess, to get what I was getting into when I watched that movie. And it progressively got more disturbing. I was like, yeah, this is awesome.
I figured you would really like this one because like the approach that it takes and like how it looks visually and stuff like that because Tim Burton is heavily influenced by like the same films that this film is heavily influenced by in terms of like its visuals and stuff like that. It's very much like uh Cabin of Dr. Caligari, Metropolis, like those early German expressionist films. and it's just so creepy. And like the black and white in this movie, because like this is the 50s. The 50s, there's plenty of movies in color, but like this works so much better
Hmm.
that's in black and white, and it
Yeah,
just really comes together.
I'm happy that they did it like that because yeah, there was they could have easily made it a colored movie, but
It just wouldn't
they
have
made the
had the
right
same
choice.
impact.
No,
Like I could just go through like the still shots on IMDb and just find all these amazing shots. What's even interesting, Robert Mitchum goes on to be Max Cady in Cape Fear, like the original one, which Max Cady has a lot in common with Harry Powell in terms of being like this very dangerous predator. And then even more fun fact, Robert Mitchum makes a cameo in Martin Scorsese's Cape Fear that came out in the early 90s because both him and Gregory Peck, who are the original leads in uh, the first Cape Fear, make appearances in Scorsese's film. Like Robert Mitchum's like the head detective in town in that. And then Gregory Peck plays the lawyer that defends Robert De Niro's Max Cady. So it's very interesting. Like Robert Mitchum had a long career of being involved in like really disturbing stalker type films like this. And he's one of my favorite older actors. And his first film credit, if you go on IMDb's Out of the Past, which is another film noir that we'll probably talk about at some point. But Ethan, do you have any other thoughts about The Night of the Hunter?
nope. I think we definitely said it all. Um, I don't think there's too much that I can add to it.
Well, apparently, if you really want to watch some noir, go to MGM Plus because this is on MGM Plus, or it is on Criterion, so you can find it on there. This is definitely a much older copy of a Criterion film. I'm trying to figure out when this was released, but first printing 2010, so this is like a 13-year-old DVD. But it's about time to get to our last film, which is also probably like the blueprint of what a film noir is and should be. Because I remember watching this in cinema class and being told, like, this is the blueprint for like what film noir is. And it's 1941's The Maltese Falcon, which is an old classic Warner Brothers film, which I have on this lovely 100 Years of Warner Brothers 4K here. And this is from writer director John Huston, who was Noah Cross in Chinatown. So, building connections here. So, he directed this film starring Humphrey Bogart as Sam Spade, who's probably like the most iconic PI in film noir history. And you have quite the group of classic characters from like Peter Lorre, who plays Mr. Cairo, who is like the prototypical henchman. Sidney Greenstreet, who plays our main antagonist in his very large and like noticeable presence. He was also in Casablanca, so was Peter Lorre. And Elijah Cook Jr., who's also in Magnum PI, plays Wilmer Cook, who's
Was he?
like, yeah, he's what the hell's his character's name in Magnum PI? He's like the older guy. He's Ice Pick. He kept like popping up through like he was a recurring guest character in Magnum PI, like the
Okay.
older kind of guy that keeps popping up in the show. He plays the gun of Sidney Greenstreet's character that keeps like button heads with
He's
Sam Spade, and then Mary Astor, very famous actress as well. So, Ethan, synopsis. San Francisco private detective Sam Spade takes on a case that involves him with three eccentric criminals, a gorgeous liar, and their quest for a priceless statuette, with the stakes rising after his partner is murdered. But Ethan, what are your general thoughts on the Maltese Falcon?
I freaking love this movie. um, and it's funny that it's described as the blueprint because it did feel like it was everything that you could possibly want from a noir film.
Yep.
Like just the aesthetic, the acting, like yeah, just the plot, the characters, everything worked out to where you had that whole nuance of like a classic detective film. And I know like Sam Spade was like it's just the detective
Mm.
like that anybody would probably be modeled after um, in Hollywood. And then I just loved how like um, cocky and confident that he is,
Yeah.
and he sure loves to throw hands.
Yep.
And that's like that's one of the exciting parts of it. Like he could throw hands and back it up type deal. Like he could talk crap and still knock you on your ass. So it was definitely a different um, pace than Jack Nicholson's
Yeah, Jake
character.
wasn't really
Where
knocking
oh,
anybody in their ass.
no, um, I really enjoyed the cast in this film. Like Joel Cairo was really he was incredibly entertaining and dramatic.
Yes, from Peter
I don't know
Lorre.
if it's supposed to be like any kind of like comic relief or whatever, but like he felt like that
Mm.
without making it like a joke throughout it. And then Ruth, she was definitely the epitome of a damsel in distress slash like a woman that had something to hide, and she was like really like doing her best to hide stuff, but you couldn't get anything past Sam. And then Casper Gutman, it's another like side character that stole. I wouldn't say like the whole show, but like when he became a prominent part of that movie until the end, like he like I felt like carried a lot of the scenes that all those characters were in, and he was definitely like huge presence when he was on screen. And
Mm.
Wilmer Cook was really annoying.
Yeah, he's like
He was a
that,
baby
like,
back.
just like,
I got really excited when he was going to be the fall guy.
it's like, you're
I got
going
so
down.
excited. I was like, "Don't lay off of me!" I was like, "Throw hands, do it!" Like,
He's interesting because he's like the tough guy in Shane that
yeah,
like keeps wanting to throw hands, but then Jack Palance's character just straight up murks him in the middle of the street in the mud, like it's nobody's business. He definitely has that like big bark, maybe a little bite kind of energy of a person. But like, oh, Humphrey Bogart is just like so perfect for all these movies. Like it's very interesting because him, Peter Lorre, and Sidney Greenstreet are all in Casablanca too together. and they all play off of each other so well. And like Sam Spade is the PI. Him and another role that um Humphrey Bogart played Philip Marlowe in The Big Sleep. So like that's another noir film. I just haven't seen that one before. That's a series of novels, like pretty famous ones. And this is also, yeah, this is based off of a novel as well. So like he plays the hard-boiled PI thing perfectly. And he has some fun moments too. Like the whole entire thing back and forth with Cairo, where he just like straight takes the gun from Cairo like it's like nothing. And then he's like, can I have the gun back? And he was like, sure. And then he points it right back at him. He's like, sure. Sure. We'll go. No worries. And just like them being playful with each other is just so much fun. Peter Lorre is such an interesting actor because he's a German Jew who came over to America in the 1930s because of Hitler. And he was in a really famous Fritz Lang film called M, where he played a child murderer and gets put on trial by like the local mob and the local people that take the law into their own hands. And right the all the propaganda films that Goebbels made, anti-Jewish films, had Peter Lorre in it. As like, look how disgusting Jewish people are. And there was clips from that movie where he played a child killer. So Peter Lorre had a very interesting career. Um, and he also had a very distinct look and feel to him. He's in Casablanca too. Also, there is no way in hell that the Kingpin from Marvel is not at least slightly influenced
Wasn't
by Sidney Greenstreet's
the funny thing,
character.
like that's in my notes.
Like
Like
he
it's in
has to be.
parentheses, Kingpin.
Like he
Yeah.
has to be. If it's not, somebody's lying because they're just like, "Oh, I didn't watch the Maltese Falcon." It's like, yeah, you did, 100%. Because like he just has that vibe so clearly.
Yeah.
Like if they made a Daredevil movie in this time in the 40s, Sidney Greenstreet 100% would have been Wilson Fisk. So like he definitely
It's
has
funny
that
because
feel.
yeah, like, yes,
Which
100%.
he's so great too. Like the cast here, I remember watching this in high school for cinema class, and I didn't like it. And like 16-year-old Shane was like, "This is boring." I also hated Raging Bull when I watched it in cinema class. I'm like, this is just 2 hours of Italian dudes yelling the F word at each other. And realistically, it is, but it's so much more. And like as an adult, I could appreciate that a lot more. I remember rewatching this. The script is so tight. One of my things that I didn't like about it originally is because it's so much tell and not show. There's so many things that happen that were just told to us that happen. But when you watch this, like John Huston's screenplay is so interesting. The dialogue's so great. And just the back and forth. Like they turn them all just sitting in a room together, being tense and intriguing and what's really going on here. And then all the way up to, speaking of famous lines in movies, it's what dreams are made of. And it's just like, it's such a weird response to what the Maltese Falcon is. But in the end, does it really matter what the Maltese Falcon is? It's all about the conspiracy and the hunt for it, and less about like what it actually is in the end. This is like, if somebody were to ask me if I had to watch one movie to really show me what a film noir is, this is it. Like, hands down, the Maltese Falcon is like, this is what a film noir is. Like, you have every single beat that you need, it, and they're great. Like they do so great with them. The whole cast is fantastic. John Huston's direction is great. Like I said, his script is great. But yeah, uh, any other points that you wanted to bring up?
None that I can think of.
Well, hopefully you
It's
all.
definitely, it's a great adventure
It's
to
a
go
great
along
movie.
with.
I'm glad that I wound up being like I had some cash back on my Amazon card. I'm like I'm gonna buy this because I didn't own it yet, and I'm glad I did and got to watch this on my 4K because look great, look crisp.
Yeah, that looks pretty. I got an old ass DVD.
Yeah, I know you did. You got that off. I
I
would
think
imagine.
with shipping, I think it was $6.50 or something. I was like, fuck it.
Yeah, like this is brand new for their 100th anniversary because this is 2023 is the 100th anniversary of Warner Brothers. Shameless plug about that too. If you go on to Max, they have a really interesting documentary series about 100 years of filmmaking in Warner Brothers. It's not like it doesn't have a ton of depth or anything, but like if you love movies, it's such a fun watch. But I hope you all enjoyed part one of our journey spotlighting film noir as we have watched and talked about four great movies, all great enough for me to own in my wonderful collection. If people didn't realize, like these are actual movies, uh, it's fun when I go on work calls and like, that's a really cool background you have there. I'm like, it's not a background. It's like,
You gotta pull. You have to pull out a freaking DVD to
it's just like these are
let people know
real.
it's real.
These are all behind me. Um, but Ethan, I look forward to our next part. But thank you for coming on and chatting some noir.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the next one.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.